Hey, what's up guys, Nishant here, and in today's video we are going to talk about, do you really need 8 GB, 10 GB or 12 GB RAM in your smartphone? So let's get started. So first of all, let's talk about how much RAM does an app needs. To answer this question, I will categorize all the available apps into three categories. Apps like daily drivers, media apps, heavy games and web browsers. So the first category is daily drivers. These are those apps that takes least amount of memory to operate. Apps like YouTube, WhatsApp, Spotify, Temple Run, etc. fall in this category. Their memory usage range lies within 200 MB to at most 300 MB. These are those apps that do not contain any media files and are usually quickest to boot. So if your device has 3 GB of available RAM, you can take up to 15 such apps in memory at a time and switch among them without losing any data. The second category is media apps. Apps like Google Photos, Gmail, Maps, Instagram, Gallery, etc. fall in this category. They take more RAM than the daily drivers, and the reason behind that is they load lots of media files simultaneously to be able to serve your page with smooth scrolling. All this media file stays in the memory and adds up to high memory usage. Their memory requirement starts at 400 MB but can take up to 800 MB of memory at times. So if you have 3 GB of available RAM, you can load up to 5 apps in your smartphone and freely switch between them. The next category is heavy games. As the name suggests, heavy games are heavy on memory usage too. Apps like Need for Speed, Asphalt, PUBG, etc. fall in this category. But it's not like they will take the same amount of memory as their size. Their RAM requirements range lies somewhere in between 800 MB to 1.2 GB. In the test done by PhonePuff, Need for Speed took around 800 MB of memory, Asphalt acquired a complete 1 GB of memory, and PUBG took a little over a GB of free space. So you get the idea. The next category is web browsers. They really surprised me with their memory consumption. I was thinking they will be in low tier league, but they turned out to be monsters in terms of active memory consumption. Web browsers acquires an individual memory block for each tab you open, and an open tab can cost your smartphone up to 400 MB of memory. So if you have 5 to 6 tabs open, it can take up to 1.5 GB of available RAM, which is much higher than any kind of heavy game out there. So how much RAM do you actually need? Nowadays 4 GB RAM is standard in almost entry-level smartphone, 6 GB is common in mid-rangers and goes up to 12 GB in flagship smartphones. If I consider you have a 4 GB RAM smartphone, you will have around 2.5 GB available RAM. What you can do with this amount of RAM is open a heavy game like PUBG, open a web browser with 3 tabs on, open YouTube, WhatsApp and freely switch between them if your system is well optimized. 6 GB RAM is really a sweet spot that I would suggest you to go for. With 6 GB of RAM, you will get around 4.5 GB to 4.8 GB of available memory. What you can do with this amount of memory is open 2 heavy games like PUBG and Asphalt 8 simultaneously in the background, with browser having 4 to 5 active tabs, WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram and 1 or 2 other small games or apps without losing any data. Yeah, there is a lot to play with it. With this amount of memory, you can get up to 6.5 GB of available RAM or more if your device is running on a stock Android. With this amount of memory, you can do whatever you want without losing any data for a long time. 4 heavy games together with all social media apps and browsers with as many active tabs you want is what you can do with this insane amount of RAM. Now things starts to sound unreasonable to me. 10 GB, 12 GB or more are pretty much the same. There won't be any leap in performance whatsoever. In fact, there is no apps that can utilize this amount of RAM right now. So there is no use of this tremendous amount of available memory space. During my research, I found that even though I had a lot of available free RAM, my system was killing some of the recently opened apps. It was not because of an unoptimized software, but the reason was background autokill functionality. Almost every OEM today include this feature in their smartphones, not to save RAM but to save battery. Lots of open apps will consume lots of battery, and to increase battery life, it's a perfect solution. So what is the use of tremendous amount of RAM? So the conclusion is more RAM is always a good feature to have. While I by no means is trying to tell you not to buy a smartphone with more RAM, what I actually mean with this video is you should not be choosing a smartphone solely because it is offering more RAM. Instead, you should focus on important features like display quality, battery life, processor, etc. as it is a combination that makes a phone perfect value for money smartphone and not some insane amount of RAM. So that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed what you saw, hit the subscribe button and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.